Good morning. This is Robin Cooper, and I am doing a little presentation so that you can work on your story sequence chart. Your story sequence chart is an outline that will help you write something that looks like a book report, but it is a summary of a story. So the first thing that you'll do is you will go to the Atlanta Elementary Literature folder. Look up the Book of Jonah and then look at Lesson 2 support documents. In it, you will see the story sequence chart, and you can print this at home. This gives you the correct outline for writing the story sequence chart. If it works better for you to just work on lined paper at home, you can totally work on lined paper at home. But I will remind you that you should skip lines on your piece of paper when you work on it at home. And the other thing that is not here is actually room for a title. Your title goes in the middle and it's underlined. So here's room for your title. You're not going to name your story until after you complete the story sequence chart. So you can print this outline and you can use this to fill in your answers. And we're going to treat, let me just print this. We're going to treat this this like an interview. So your parents or your friend, they are going to interview you and you're going to be able to fill this in. Let me print that. I don't want it double-sided because I would like the questions to be able to be put on the table next to the story sequence chart. Okay, let me walk you through doing this. You are going to have this page in front of you. This is Unit 3 from the Institute in Excellence in Writing. And you're using this chart to produce notes. Do you remember the rules for a keyword outline? The rules are you can only use 2 or 3 words per line. Every item needs a comma after it. A comma looks like this little mark there. It's like can you see that? It's like a dot with a little line coming off of it. So, and if you're using a computer to type your paper, at the top of mine, I can click on something called a form filling button, and it will allow me to type right on the page. I actually recommend that kids handwrite their story sequence charts and their paragraphs. Okay, so each line can have 2 or 3 words on it, maximum. You are not writing full sentences. You are writing just one word clues to yourself to remind you of the answers that you want to put. There's not a wrong answer to put on a keyword outline, but it's not going to be helpful to you if you use words like articles a, an, or the. It will be helpful to you if you use nouns or action verbs. That will help remind you better. And if you need more clues about your story, it is okay for you to use symbols or numbers. The rule for symbols is that it may not take you longer to draw your symbol than it does take you to write out a word. I would not also worry about spelling on a keyword outline. The keyword outline is a memory tool. It's a memory trigger for you to remember what you want to say. Okay, so I'm going to put this on the left and I'm going to actually open it again. I want to duplicate this on the right. And the reason I'm doing that is just that it's going to look like what it looks like on your desk. So if I hide the sidebar, you're going to have your page on one side of your desk and you're going to have your questions on the other side of your desk. So here are your questions. On this form, on the left, there's a summary of what each section is about in your story. So the first Roman numeral says setting, characters, and background. You are going to ask yourself these questions: who, what, like, when, and where. I'll go over this again in a minute. The second Roman numeral, the second paragraph of your paper, is about conflict and plot. So see on your paper, it says conflict and plot. So we'll go over what you want to put in that section in a moment. The third paragraph of your paper is called climax and resolution. Climax and resolution. So let's go back to the top and focus on setting, characters, and background. Now we've covered about setting and we've covered about the characters as well. Fairy tales are a great way to think about stories. They often begin with a phrase called long ago in a kingdom far away. That is a clue for the setting of that fairy tale story. So what we want to do is begin stories by telling when and where that story happened. The first question you're going to answer on number 1 on your page is, who is your story about? Pause the video and tell me who your story is about. Those answers will give you the main people of your story. We call those characters. And in a fairy tale, it might sound like there lived a wise king and a kind princess. But for your story, I don't want you to copy my fairy tale. I want you to make up your own characters. Tell me their ages. Tell me if they're male or female. Tell me what they like to wear. Tell me what they like to do. Tell me what their personality is like. Use only 2 or 3 words to tell me who your characters are in your story on line number 1. Use 2 or 3 words and put a comma between them. Okay, pause the video now and answer number 1. Number 2, you can put what those characters are like. So I sort of described that in number 1. But if you didn't have enough room and you want to tell me more details about your characters' hobbies, preferences, favorite colors, favorite food, anything else that adds some details about your character, put that on line 2, and then pause the video. Number 3, you're going to answer the question, when did this story happen? When did the story happen? It could be vague. It could be a vague time, like a long, long time ago. It could be a specific year. It could be sometime in the future. It could be a time period like the Renaissance or the medieval times, or in modern day times, like right now. But answer the question when on line number 3 and pause the video so you have time to write your 2 or 3 keywords using commas between. On line number 4, answer the question, where did your story happen? And you might even consider the story started in one place, your characters went to another place, and they ended up finally at the end of the story in a third place. Remember to use your commas between your words. You may use symbols or numbers to help you. They don't count as your words. And then pause the video so you have time to write your answers to where did your story happen. On line number 5, you'll notice that there are parentheses. Parentheses are there because you don't necessarily have to fill in answers for number 5. But if you want to use number 5 and you did not have enough room before, you may add anything that has to do, any details that have to do with your setting, characters, or background on number 5, and then pause the video. If you don't have anything additional to put, on number 5, just keep going and we'll work on paragraph 2. Paragraph 2 is about conflict and plot, the conflict and the plot of your story. For any story to be interesting, your main characters must have a problem, a want, or something that they need. That's called a conflict. Most of the action of a story is how that big conflict is dealt with. So most of the problems of the story tell what your main characters do, what your main characters say, what your main characters are thinking, or what your main characters are feeling. That's called the plot of your story. The first thing you want to do on line number 1 is describe the problem. So think of a really big problem or a really interesting problem, and then write 2 or 3 keywords describing that problem, that want, or that need. Remember to use your commas between your words. Remember to use nouns or action verbs, and that numbers and symbols are free. And pause the video so you have time to do that. When you're done with that, on line number 2, describe what your characters do in the story. What are your characters doing to deal with that problem, that want, or that need? Write 2 or 3 keywords that describe what your characters do. Do not write in full sentences. Just write clues for yourself and put a comma between your words on line 2. Pause the video. Now on line 3, you're going to write 2 or 3 keywords that answer what your characters say. So on line 3, think about what your characters might say as they're dealing with the problem. Pause the video and write your 2 or 3 keywords. You may use symbols or numbers. Those are free. They don't count as your 2 or 3 keywords. And this is a little tricky because you're describing an entire story just on this one page with this outline. Okay, on line number 3. So pause the video, finish number 2. And then when you're ready, on line number 3, write about what your characters, oh, I just did that, sorry. On line number 4, write about what your characters think or feel. What are they thinking when this problem, this want, or this need is happening? What are they feeling as they're going through the conflict? Write 2 or 3 keywords about what your characters are thinking or feeling. Use a comma between the words. Symbols and numbers are free. Try to use nouns or action verbs to describe what your characters are thinking or feeling for number 4. And then pause the video. When you're ready, if you had things that did not fit in numbers 1 through 4, you may write on line 5. And pause the video so you have time to do that. When you're done with your conflict and plot, move on to Roman numeral 3, which is all about your climax and resolution. Okay, when there's a problem or a conflict, a want, or a need, there has to be a way to solve it, or else the story is not satisfying. We've got to be able to have our characters solve their problems. And we call those events that lead to that problem being solved the climax. It's the most exciting part of the story. It's when the story is either going to work out and make us feel really good and happy, or the story is going to really disappoint us. And some stories can have bad endings, and we feel sad and we feel sympathy and empathy with the characters because their hearts were broken, or they didn't get what they wanted, or let's say they didn't get back at the bad guy, something like that. But then we know that lots of stories have good endings, like the princess was saved, or the bad guy got put in jail, or the hero of the story was able to, marry the person that he fell in love with. So the stories can have really good endings. But whatever your um, events are in the story that solve the problem, the want or the need, whatever those events are, we call that the climax. So again, it's the most important, exciting part of that story. And we call the result of the climax the resolution. So the resolution is how that problem works out. How is that problem solved? And in most stories, the characters live happily ever after. So, and then the last thing that we're considering in the third paragraph is the final clincher. The final clincher is the last sentence of the story, and it is what makes the story feel finished. So, in a fairy tale, that might sound like happily ever after. So, take your outline on Roman numeral 3, and on line number 1, I want you to answer the question, how does your story end? How does your story end? Write 2 or 3 words that remind you how you want your story to end. Put a comma between your words. Remember to choose noun or action verbs, and that numbers and symbols are free. You're not writing in a complete sentence. You're just giving yourself clues to remind you of the story that you thought about. Put a comma between your words and pause the video so you have time to write. When you're done with that, on number 2, you're going to answer, what happens after? What happens after? What happens after your problem is solved? Okay, write 2 or 3 keywords on line number 2. Put a comma between your words. Numbers and symbols are free. And pause the video so you have time to write that. And then on line number 3, when you're ready, you're going to write your final clincher. Your final clincher is one sentence that ends your story. Remember that you're not actually writing a sentence on line number 3. You're writing 2 or 3 words that remind you of what you want your sentence to be, and put a comma between your words. Okay, when you're done with your outline for your story sequence chart, I want you to pat yourself on the back because you did a great job. It's difficult work to figure out how to write a keyword outline and actually how to write an entire story. Now, if you got really stuck on writing your own story this way, using the keyword outline first, it's okay for you to think of a story first and then answer the questions for the keyword outline. The other thing you can do is, if it's just really hard for you to think of a story, is you could take a fairy tale or an Aesop's fable that you already know and answer the question for that Aesop's fable or fairy tale, and fill in the keyword outline. Okay, what I want you to do now is tomorrow on the next day, so don't do your rough draft today, but tomorrow on the next day, is use your keyword outline to write a rough draft of your actual story. So what you're going to do in your story is you're going to use your keywords to write a rough draft. Every paragraph in a story is indented. That means that on a page, you're not going to start the sentence all the way to the left margin of the page. You're going to start about 5 spaces to the right. That's called an indentation. That's how you start every paragraph. It's a visual clue for us that you have indeed written a paragraph. I'm going to open up a new blank page here, and I'm going to show you that if this were lined paper, just imagine that my paper is lined. The first thing I'm going to do is put my name and date in the corner. I'm going to put the name of the class, which for me, this class is elementary literature. So you want to write this, elementary literature. You don't have to write the word name. You're going to write your name, first and last name. If you're Cooper kids, my preference is for you to write in cursive. and then write whatever date it is. If I were writing my story today, I would say January 29th, 2026. But it might not be January 29th when you actually write your story. And remember, you don't have to write the word name, date, and name of the class. You can just write your first and last name, the date that it is today, and elementary literature. On your lined paper, you're going to leave room for your title in the middle of the page. So you might just get a straight line drawn across the page because you're going to come back later and write the title of your story later. On your page, I want you to write an X that is a visual reminder that you're skipping every other line. You're not writing on every line of your rough draft. You are definitely skipping lines. And then what you can do is you can take a highlighter. Let me see if I have a good highlighter here. So this is a little different because I'm on a computer, you're going to be writing by hand. So the text background, like if I had a highlighter, what I would do, is that going to do that for me? What I would do is I would take a highlighter on your notebook page and make every other line, I would just put a little color there. It won't do it for me. Why won't it do it? I just want this to be yellow. I wonder if I could put a shape there. If I put a little shape, like pretend this is my little highlighter. I'm going to make a line. It won't do it. I'm going to make a line on every other line. There we go. And I'm going to make that yellow. Let's see if I can even say none and then make this fit. Yep, this is what my highlighter would look like on my page. Is I don't highlight across the whole thing. That would be a waste of time. This just shows you, oh, yep, I want to write on every other line. And I would actually do this all the way down my whole page. Then pretend that I did this all the way down my page. Then what I would do is take my notes from number 1 and remember that I'm indenting, and I would start writing. Let me see one more thing so that this will make me be able to write over my images. I'm going to put them to stay on the page, and let's see if it's going to let me write or not. So I would go introduction. It's not. Okay. Can I make that go to the back? No. Okay, pretend my highlighter was there. Oh, I see what it's doing. Okay, I see what it's doing. So there's like my highlighters there. Then I would write the start of my story. I'm not going to write introduction. I'm actually going to write the start of my story. Once upon a time, there were 3 people named Bob, Sue, and Larry. And then I would keep answering. I would use my clues in my keyword outline, and I would keep writing the sentences of my story one sentence at a time. First, I would write the sentence for number 1. Then I would write the sentence for number 2. Then I would write the sentence for number 3. And I'm only writing on the lines that are every other line for my rough draft. When I'm done with my first paragraph, I'm going to do the same thing for my second paragraph. I'm going to start writing about my conflict and plot, but I'm not writing the word conflict and plot. I am, let's pretend that this starts my second paragraph. I am just I'm using my notes on number 1 to write my paragraph for number 2. So, oops, this formatting's tricky. It might look like when I start my second paragraph, I'm going to indent my paragraph, and my conflict and plot might start with a huge, oh, you can't see that. Let's see. A huge monster came into their home. I mean, just for example, I'm making this up as I go, right? But you would already have your ideas written on your notes there. Okay, so you're going to keep writing your sentences for number one, number two, number three, number four. You're skipping lines on your page, and then you'll do the same thing for your third paragraph. And then you'll be done with your rough draft. When you're done with your rough draft, handwriting your rough draft, you want to turn your paper into your mom, and your mom is going to, or your mom or dad, they are going to give you notes and corrections on your page. You know what you should do even before you give your notes to your mom or dad is you should check your paper for a few things. You should make sure every sentence is capitalized. You should make sure that your spelling is correct. You're not going to know how to spell every word yet, but you want to check for the words that you do know. Did you spell everything correctly? If you made an error in spelling, you want to fix it. Now, on a keyword outline, you don't have to, excuse me, on a rough draft, you don't have to erase and rewrite the word if you want. What you could do is put a line over the word. Let me see for the, like a line over the word, and you can write the correct spelling of a, let's see if I use the wrong homonym for there. So you just watched me change the spelling for there to be wrong. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's possessive. That's the wrong spelling for there. I want to use this spelling for there. You could write that correct spelling for there right in the empty space that you left. And that's the wonderful thing about skipping lines in a rough draft. So you check your page, make sure that you have punctuation after every sentence. That is either going to be a period, an exclamation mark, or a question mark. If your character asks a question or you ask a question, put a question mark. If the sentence is dramatic or exciting, use an exclamation mark. You might even have quotations because your character said something. So there could be a quote. Use your quotation marks. So check your punctuation after every sentence. Then hand your paper to mom and say, Mom, would you please check my work? Is there something I can do for you to pay you back for your time? That's called hiring an editor. Okay, so you're going to hire an editor. And then your mom's goal is to hand you the page back the next day. And when you get your page back with corrections the next day, be really humble. If there is a correction that you do not understand, ask your mom to give you some feedback and ask some questions. Don't be offended. Your mom is there to help you. So don't be insulted or bothered that there are edits required on your paper. That's what every writer goes through is an editing process. And in fact, this may come as a surprise to you, but many writers go through many rough drafts. Hopefully, you only have to do this process once for your page because you're just starting to learn how to write. When you get your paper back, then you're going to write your final draft. On your final draft, and you can pause this video between these steps so that you can keep up with me. But on your final draft, you're going to start your page the same exact way with your name, your date, and the name of the class, elementary literature. I want you now at this point to think of a title and underline it, put it in the center of your page. Your final draft, and your goal in your final draft is to use your very best, cleanest, most beautiful handwriting. So I do want to see cursive on your final draft, or if you don't write cursive, if mom doesn't teach you cursive, then you may write print. But for like the Cooper kids, we write in cursive. So I want to see cursive on your final draft. If it is very overwhelming to think of all the right words and glance back and forth on the rough draft and translate that to the final draft, you may ask for help. In the Cooper home, I am willing to help you type your paper in a way that you can trace the cursive. But if you are age like 9 and higher, then I would rather you not have to trace everything. But I also don't want this to be 100% overwhelming for you. When you're done with your final draft, I want you to file your pages in your notebook in the right section of your notebook, which for you, that's going to go right behind lesson 2. I want you to practice retelling your story so that in class you can present your story to us. You may look at your paper and glance down at your paper for reminders of what you want to say. But then when you tell your story, look up at the audience, and that will be the presentation portion of your paper. That's really important. Do your best to try to memorize your paper so you're not relying on looking down at your paper the whole time. A lot of people, when they're doing a presentation, they actually go back to their keyword outline and use those notes because they're not reading verbatim, or in other words, word for word, what they wrote on their final draft. They're going through this editing and drafting process helps you remember all the things that you wanted to say in your paper. Okay, so that is the end of these instructions for writing your keyword outline and using this amazing story sequence chart with IEW. Congratulations to you. I am very excited for what you're going to produce and share with us. Thank you so much.